Hi everyone, my name is Bronte and today we're going to be discussing the topic of calculating clinical attachment level. Now, measuring clinical attachment level is one of the 8 advanced probing techniques, along with assessing oral lesions, measuring gingival recession, and also measuring tooth mobility, among many other things. So measuring clinical attachment level is actually a very crucial part to the overall periodontal assessment process. So it is crucial for all hygienists to know how to accurately measure clinical attachment level. Now, there are some minor calculations required. It is a very simple process, but I did create a PowerPoint presentation for everybody. Hopefully that will help simplify the process, and I have no doubt that you guys will be successful. So let's get started.
Okay, so again, we are going to be learning about advanced probing techniques, specifically calculating clinical attachment level. Okay, so let's review today's learning objective. Following this lesson, the student will accurately calculate the clinical attachment level of any given tooth. So hopefully after today's PowerPoint presentation, everyone will be comfortable enough to do so. Okay, so what is clinical attachment level? Clinical attachment level, or CAL, or CAL, is the approximate position of periodontal attachment of a tooth, and that is measured by the periodontal probe. So essentially what we're looking for when we're measuring clinical attachment level is how much periodontal support a given tooth has. So a very important thing to note here is that clinical attachment levels are always calculated from measurements made from a fixed point, the cement to enamel junction, or CEJ. And as you can see, I've notated on this image an arrow that marks the CEJ, and this is where the enamel and the cementum of a tooth meet. There are 2 measurements used to calculate the clinical attachment level. Number 1 is the probing depth, and everyone should be comfortable enough to do so at this point. As you can see in the picture on the left-hand side, the measurement is about 6 millimeters deep. And number 2, we're checking for the level of the gingival margin. And what that measurement is the distance between the CEJ and the gingival margin. And as you can see in this image, it is about 5 millimeters in depth. CAL is like a basic math problem. It's actually quite simple. CAL equals probe depth measurement plus or minus gingival margin level. And I say plus or minus because it depends on the level of attachment. Remember, the gingival margin level may be at, above, or below the CEJ. So let's start with a simple example. In this image, as you can see here, the probe depth measurement is about 6 millimeters deep. And as you can see by the arrow, the gingival margin level is at the CEJ. It is not above or below. So in this case, there's no math that needs to be done because it's 0 millimeters where the gingival margin meets. So there's an overall clinical attachment loss of 6 millimeters. So that's how you find your CAL. So let's do another example. As you can see in the image, there's 4 millimeters of probe depth measurement. And also, as depicted by the arrow, you can see that there are 2 millimeters of gingival recession. That means that the gum line is below the CEJ by 2 millimeters. So since we are trying to calculate the total amount of clinical attachment loss, we're going to add the 4 millimeters from the probe depth measurement plus the 2 millimeters of the gingival margin level, and that's going to equal 6 millimeters of total clinical attachment loss. So example number 3 here shows a probe depth measurement of 9 millimeters deep, and the gingival margin level is 3 millimeters above the gum line. So what that means is that the CAL will be 6 millimeters deep. And how we got that measurement is by taking the 9 millimeters of probe depth measurement and subtracting the excess 3 millimeters of gum tissue that's above the CEJ. And again, that leads us to 6 millimeters. So let's do a quick clinical scenario. Let's say that tooth number 3 presents with 5 millimeters of gingival recession, and that you measure a probe depth measurement on the direct buccal to be 3 millimeters deep. So what is the clinical attachment level? So it's very similar to example number 2 where the patient presented with some gingival recession. what we do is we take the 3 millimeters of probe depth measurement and add the 5 millimeters of gingival recession, and that gives us a total of 8 millimeters of clinical attachment loss. So let's do a brief review. Clinical attachment level calculates the approximate amount or level of periodontal support. Finding the relationship of the gingival tissue to the CEJ is key. Remember, it can either be at, above, or below the CEJ. Hygienists must find the probing depth and the level of the gingival margin in order to calculate clinical attachment level properly. And the final calculation to go over is that cal equals probe depth measurement plus or minus gingival margin level. So did we meet today's learning objective? Well, let's review that again briefly. Following this lesson, the student will accurately calculate the clinical attachment level of any given tooth. Now, I would say that we've done a very good job at doing so today. We have gone over a handful of wonderful clinical examples, so I believe that we have met today's learning objective. Now, if anybody has any questions or concerns, of course, you're always free to contact me at any time. Here is a brief list of the references that I used today.
So that is all that I have for you guys today. I hope that you found this lesson to be very helpful to you. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.